Okay, so one of our first paper assignments that we're going to be looking at is the literacy narrative. And I just want to give you some brief notes and then talk about a prompt that we're going to be using to get you started as one of your first papers of writing. We're also going to be reading some literacy narratives throughout the week and looking at a couple of examples. It's no surprise that a literacy narrative is a well-told story. And with most narratives, those often revolving around the topic of literacy often set up some sort of situation that needs to be resolved or investigated, or maybe there's a problem or a concern, something that needs resolution. That can be really explored in a variety of ways. Some literacy narratives look at the role that reading or writing played in someone's life. It could be something as learning to read or write when a challenge was met. It could be a wide variety of different topics around this. Going off that really quick too, some literacy narratives can explore, a moment, a person, a place, a thing, stories, impactful. They're very, very fluid and open literacy narratives for interpretation. It is definitely not as straightforward as it must be. It must be just a piece about how I learned to read or write. That is not the case in what we're looking for. We also look for a lot of vivid detail. This is really important in any type of writing, but of course details can bring a narrative to life, and that's what we want to do in all of our writing, in academic writing, personal writing, it doesn't matter. We want to give them these vivid mental images of the sights and the sounds and smells and tastes. And so, especially if you're recalling a memory, you want to make sure that you bring back the reader to this memory as best as possible, because we haven't experienced with you. This is why dialogue's really, really important, especially when you can integrate that. You also want to give some indication of the narrative significance. So, by literal definition, the literacy narrative is telling something that the writer remembers about learning to read or write. The writer also has to make clear why the incident matters, or why that person matters, or why that thing matters, a place matters, whatever it might be. So you can reveal the significance in a lot of ways, but definitely the trick is to avoid tacking on to the end of a statement about your significance. Like, you don't want to seem too preachy or that you're unveiling the moral of the story too soon. You want to give your reader something to look at. These are some examples. Again, these are not limited. You might have memories, you might have someone who taught you, you might have a book or a text that was significant, you might have an event, something that you found difficult or challenging. Remember, just because it's a literacy narrative doesn't have to mean it's a positive experience. It could be something that maybe wasn't a positive experience, but you learned from it as well. And you always want to think whenever you're writing, what is my purpose? Why am I telling this story? Why am I sharing this memory? You want to think about the reasons for your choice and how that's going to affect you when you write. You also want to think about your audience. Are your classmates, are other people reading this likely to have had similar experiences? Would they give a similar story? Or do you find yourself having to give more backstory and explanation? You don't want to assume that they know everything. Then what kind of attitude do you want to project? What's your stance? Is it more positive, negative, neutral? Is it critical? Do you have humor in there? How do you want your readers to see you? And then, of course, when we get to our digital component, how will you design your narrative? How will your narrative be visualized in print, photos, illustrations, presented orally, websites? How are you bringing this visually to life, which is a really cool multimedia portion. So along with this, I want to talk about the literacy narrative. And this is our official prompt, which is up on your Canvas page. Your rough draft is due to Canvas by October 24th. Then we'll do peer reviews. Then we'll have your final draft due. And of course, don't forget there'll always be rooms for revision as we keep moving forward. You will then have time for your digital component to post your links to that from rough draft to all the way to your end draft. And that final will culminate by the 28th of October. So what you're going to do for this assignment, you're going to describe and analyze the meaning of a personal experience that you've had with writing or reading. You will write your narrative, and in that narrative, you're going to talk about a moment or an episode from your past that involves this writing and reading, and it's a first-person account, so you can definitely use I here. You have two goals. You want to tell the story of this literacy event in a vivid and engaging manner, and also explain the significance in relation to it, what your story reveals about the meaning and use of writing. And then we're going to translate your narrative into a digital literacy narrative to share. You might find some of these very interesting to also look at on our site. So when you're on here and you're in week, oh my goodness, what week are we in? Week one. Still in week one. When you're on here and looking at our literacy narrative where you can find examples of everything, the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives also has a really, really good website that you can go to. And this has some really interesting ones to read and also look at. And you can even submit your own, which is pretty cool. So if anybody's open to doing that, we also might do that. So I just kind of went through these moments and what a literacy narrative actually is, and you can read more about that as well. Or remember, you're not trying to give a complete history of somebody's writing experience or your own writing experience. You're just trying to focus on a moment or moments or episodes, events. You might have to connect something from past to present, and that's okay, but you're not saying, in first grade, this happened, and then in second grade, this happened, and then in third grade and fourth, and no. Love all of it, but we don't want to hear every single portion of it. You'll be writing a much, much longer literacy narrative than you want to. So your requirements for this, you should focus on one or two concrete moments or episodes. No summarizing your whole writing life. It's nonfiction, so it has to be a first person personal narrative. You should have a structure to it. Now, however you want to structure it is up to your own discretion, but you need to have a structure to it. You should be leaving the reader with some sort of theme or message that's implied and something with closure. No longer than 4 to 5 pages, typed, of course, using first person. Have a title to it, sharing these powerful experiences through. Now, I have some questions on here. You do not have to use these, but certainly you can use them as a way to narrow down your ideas. They might help you a little bit more with that. And after you're writing your written portion of this, you're going to then develop your narrative as a multimodal presentation, meaning taking it just off the page from the text and using spoken voice and video to really represent your story. So you're going to create a digital project to highlight your essay, and we'll look at some examples. These are short recordings. We'll have files and links to share. You can make a video recording of yourself discussing your narrative over a slideshow of images. You can record yourself going through a Tumblr page with images and text that you created that you feel like represent your literacy narrative. You can use Pinterest boards. You can use a Padlet. We're going to talk about, as you write, how you feel like these should be displayed. But this will be a really cool way to also, integrate some of your own images or own impressions or however you view your vision of your literacy narrative coming through. And I'm really, really excited. Like I said, we're going to look at a lot of them. And when you're going through, you can look at the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives. You can read through some of these. You can look at some of the really cool, very cool visual pieces that others have put together, but more so especially, I also included a revision checklist to help you as you keep writing. So I'm excited to keep going into these, and this is one of a great chance for us to learn more about each other, but also develop your writing styles, and that's so very, very important for our class. So let me know what questions you have. I know these are brief. All of the notes are uploaded, and they'll help complement our readings for class as well.